Hello, Magic Israel listeners. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I have with me Mark Patterson, who is a sound healer and a near death experiencer. But, Mark, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about you and all of the wonderful things that you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Shannon, it's going to be a great conversation we're going to have, and I can really feel the high energy. So, I'm a latchkey kid from Iowa. I grew up with a single parent who had two jobs, and so all my time was I spent a lot of time alone by myself. I was very psychic as a kid. I always knew things about people. I saw the lights and auras around people. I had numerous visitations from aliens and beings in my dreams, and also I would see the UFOs and E.T.s as a kid. And of course, I'd always try to get my mom. Mom, come out, they're here, and she could never see them. You know, and so I was told that I was crazy, that I was always teased and taunted for being psychic, for being intuitive. Don't talk about that. Why do you know that? Don't you ever repeat that? Don't say that. And my father, who was a holy roller, a
Mhm.
Southern Baptist, he always told me that I was possessed. So you learn not to trust yourself. Uh, but in general terms, my background is, and I'll go back to that stuff in a second. But my background is I've been a fine dining server for more years than I care to admit. But it's the only opportunity that's given me to travel all over the world.
Yeah.
I can't. I've been to Egypt a few times. I can't say, hey, I can't go work for IBM. With my college education, I went to both undergraduate and graduate school. And say, hey, I want to go to Egypt for 20 days. They're probably going to say no. So being in the hospitality industry has given me the freedom and flexibility to travel abroad all over, and it's been a fascinating experience. But anyway, going back to my childhood, I would dream over and over again that all the gifts I wanted, all Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, Disneyland, feeling love, feeling like I belong, feeling like I was valued. I always found those things inside my bedroom closet. And anytime I wanted to feel loved, be reassured, to feel secure, I'd find my way in my dreams inside that bedroom closet. Well, 40 some years later, you realize the message of dreaming about everything that you want is inside the bedroom closet means that everything is inside your own heart.
Oh,
It's
great
already,
analogy, Mark.
it's already within you. Um, so unfortunately, by the time I was 13 or 14 years old, I was consuming alcohol and drugs because I didn't want to feel anymore, because it was so overwhelming. It was so overwhelming to hear the voices. It was so overwhelming to try to talk to people, and all they told you was that you were crazy. So I didn't want to do it anymore. And then when I was 16, at a high school party at the Canterbury Inn in Coralville, Iowa, it's actually still there. Um, I had a group of my high school friends surround me in a circle, go chug, 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 go, 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 go. So I downed a fifth of vodka, four beers, two glasses of wine, and about four or five wine coolers in about 90 minutes. So
Kids are so reckless.
yeah, teenagers do reckless things, and I people have asked me a lot, well, were you trying to end your life that night?
Mm-mm.
No, no, I was trying to impress my older friends. I was trying to be, quote, a man. And so my body went unconscious. I went into cardiac arrest. My skin was green, purple, and black. And as anyone who's had a near-death experience will tell you, that when you first leave the body, at first it's very scary because you're trying to get a hold of your classmates' attention, and all that, they don't see you, they don't hear you, they just see the body that's passed out. They just think you're passed out, on the bathroom floor of the suite there. And so then I was greeted by my grandfather Russell. He passed away when I was about 3 years old. And it's very common that if you have a grandparent who passes away when the grandchild where the grandparent passes away when the grandchild is young, they become their guardian. They kind of look over their lives and things like that. And Russell informed me that I was going home. And so, and again, when you have a near-death experience, when you cross over, it is a multi-dimensional reality. It's a multi-dimensional universe. It's parallel realities. Um, and all these things are simultaneous. So while I'm being informed that Mark is leaving, there are 7 angels. They're 14 feet tall each. And there's like a hologram of my life. It's like a table. I always say it was like the City of Clouds and Empire Strikes Back. That's the only thing I can really relate it to. And anytime that I was angry, resentful, or blamed other people, and Shannon, that's all that we ever do when we're teenagers. They ask, how does that relate to love? And everything in life is our ability to express love. Forgiveness is forgiving your love away no matter what happens to you. And if you're always out getting the car, getting the promotion, getting the things, you are forgetting who you really are. And so they went and introduced me to this being that was about 30 to 40 feet tall. The Bible talks about the giants. If you go to Egypt and Abu Simbel, they're the 4 beings that are 40 feet tall each. The archangels, the one on the right, we believe is Archangel Metatron. We believe that Nefertiti was probably 12 or 14 feet tall, that Ugnaught was over 16 feet tall. And the Egyptians, when their artwork did things as they were not abstract, they were not symbolic, they were in Egyptian times in that era, they made things exactly as they were. So, and the Bible makes references to the giants, and those they were the giants. They saw that the wives of men were fair, and they took them as their own. So this being what it was, a giant, and it formed an icosahedron. And before it came back into Mark, they talked to me a lot about sound, healing through sound, and sacred geometry, and specifically the Melchizedek priesthood. The Bible says Jesus is like Melchizedek, and thou forever are a priest of Melchizedek priesthood. So that being formed an icosahedron, a geometric platonic solid, and entered my heart and brought me, Mark, back to life. Now, everyone for about 3 or 4 days looked like they were like this big. It was very confusing as to where I was at, who I was. Then about the 4th or 5th day, everything clicked on. I am Mark. I'm a sophomore at Iowa City West in Iowa City, Iowa. And, I kind of knew that was my mom, and, kind of all the pictures fell into place. So, then, it just made that whole experience. So people say, well, how did that change you? Well, it just made me more psychic, which is what's the last thing that I needed as a teenager, was to be more psychic. So shortly after that experience, I was in Wisconsin, at Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, in Door County. It's a beautiful part of America. And one morning I went to Peter's mother, my friend Peter, he and I played baseball together. And I said, you need to call your daughter. His older sister was coming, and tell her not to come. This is really important. You just tell her not to come. And they got real frustrated with me. They got upset with me. And then that night I said, look, you need to call your daughter now and tell her that she just can't be here. And Peter's mom on this thing, I know that you've been seeing us fight, argue, which is not used to, but everything is okay. I was like, no, she can't be here. Well, they sent me home on the Greyhound bus the next morning because they were so upset with me. Well, Peter's sister, their daughter, was killed in the car accident on the way going up there. And again, it was like, I did what you asked me to do. This is crap. I don't want to deal with this. So I got into smoking marijuana, hash, whatever it was, just to, again, numb everything out. And then around the ages of 18 or 19, I was introduced to Dick Sutphin, who wrote the book with Simon and Schuster called "You Were Born Again to Be Together" about reincarnation and soulmates. I've said for years that he was probably the biggest influence in my life. He and I eventually became friends because he eventually moved to Sedona. We'd, go have coffee and lunch together and all that stuff. And then my other friend, Toby, his mom, Patty Lou, introduced me to Jerry Bowman and Joe Albiani. Joe Albiani was an attorney out of Boston. Uh, Jerry Bowman was a Vietnam veteran who was a trans channel. Now, you probably have never heard of Jerry Bowman, but you probably heard of an actress named Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine's a famous actress who believes in all the reincarnation, past lives, E.T.s, and all those things. Her channel was Kevin Ryerson. Kevin Ryerson channeled John the Apostle, John the Beloved, and Jerry Bowman was channeling John. And after listening to a couple of his videotapes, it's audio tapes, their show was called The Out of the Ordinary Show, KIED in Los Angeles, California, which the archives are still available. And I found that John would come to me and start speaking to me and saying things like, a master is not a master because he himself says so. A master is called master because those who witness him say that he is master. Or we never use the truth to be right. We never use the truth to make others wrong. We never use the truth to score points for ego. We never use the truth to belittle others. And he, from about 18 to 25, 19 to 25, he gave me a lot of information, especially in my dreams, about esoteric teachings. And of course, Shannon, when you're a male, when you're 18, 19 to 25, there's too many blondes, there's too many brunettes, there's college football, there's Nature Boy Ric Flair. Woo! It's just,
You
yeah,
got
there's
bigger fish to fry
yeah, right,
than
right.
spiritual evolution.
Right. And 30 years later, you go, man, maybe I should have listened a little bit more. Maybe I should have, paid attention a little bit more. And, the last year or so, John has come back to me in my dreams. So, maybe the second time around or third time around, I'll listen and pay attention a little bit more. And so then it was around 1993, 94. When the first time I lived in Charleston, South Carolina twice, from 92 to 96, and then from 2016 to 2020. And I was working at 82 Queen. It's a restaurant down there. And I was watching the videotapes with Drunvalo Melchizedek called The Flower of Life. It's about sacred geometry, the Sphinx, the pyramids. Everything is based on a mathematical sequence. And as I'm watching these videotapes, this guy comes into our restaurant for 5 days in a row, like 5 or 6 nights in a row. And every night he ends up in my section, which is impossible to begin with in the first place.
Yeah.
And then the last date that he's here, he's with his family. And I hear this angelic voice, and it's a female angelic voice. I mean, I know what it is now. I didn't know what it was at the time. Goes, we need you to talk to him. And they're pointing to the gentleman at the table. I didn't know what his name was at the time. We need you to talk to him about the videotapes you're watching. Well, we have an hour and a half wait. I have 6 tables. In restaurant terms, I'm in the leads. And I'm just like, no, it's not going to happen. Like, screw that. What? No,
Yeah.
so
I've worked
I,
in restaurants. I have nightmares about it to this day. Yeah.
So, you go, I go to leave the table. I get physically pushed back by the table by an unseen force. And they say, this is really important that you do this. So I'm thinking, my God, what am I going to ask this guy? And so I look at him and go, are you a mathematics professor? Thinking, how am I going to bring up this conversation? And he goes, Mark, what did you really want to ask me? And so I'm like, well, I'm watching these videotapes on sacred geometry, the Sphinx pyramids. He goes, Drunvalo Melchizedek, I have to have those tapes. I need those tapes please give me those tapes. I go, well, they don't belong to me, but I'll call Rosemarie and ask her if I can give the tapes to you. So the next day I called her. I go, hey, this guy, Roger, he's adamant those tapes belong to him. Can I give them to him? She goes, yeah, sure. I don't care. Why not? So I meet Roger and his son, Sean, a few days later, and I give him the videotapes. A few months pass by. I don't hear anything from him. I go to work, and again, this female angelic voice comes back to me and says, we need you to go to your manager and tell her that you have to go home. I'm just like, sure, why not? So I go, Missy, is it okay if I go home? And she goes, yeah, we're gonna be so late, go and go home. So the voice comes back to me and goes, please don't stop anywhere. Please go directly to your condo and don't stop in the way. So I get to my condo in downtown Charleston at the time, the carriage home. And as I open the door, it's Roger calling me from France. He says, how would you like to work with Drunglow in person? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What do I need to do? How much is it going to cost? And he says, everything has been taken care of. Everything's been paid for. Thank you for the videotapes. And, Deepak Chopra calls those events like synchro destiny. And I do believe that our guides and angels are always there with us, wanting to give us information if we're willing to listen. And I think at that time, so that was like 93, 94, I had only told 2 people about my near-death experience. Kirsten, who I was dating at the time in Charleston, and my best friend Dean in Iowa. I mean, I just didn't tell anyone about it. And then it was probably about a year after that whole thing with working with Drunvalo and the Flower of Life stuff, probably 95, almost 10 years. 10 years after that whole my near-death experience, I got a phone call at 1:30 in the morning from a woman I never met, never spoke with before. It's kind of vague as how she got a hold of me and my phone number. And Shannon, she described verbatim everything that they told me in my near-death experience about sound, sacred geometry, the Melchizedek priesthood. And then she described that dream I had as a child over and over again about being inside the bedroom closet. And so we did. She is a real person.
I was going to ask who she is, but I was waiting for you to get there.
I met her shortly after that. I'll just say her name is Deb.
Yeah.
And then, but I've not heard from her since 1999 or 2000.
So she was someone you did know from before,
I
or
did
you?
not. I did not know her until
How
that
did she
phone
know
call.
you? I guess was my question.
So she explained to me that her angels communicated a lot of information to her about me.
Gotcha. Okay.
She was to call me.
Okay. So one of the questions I have is, you do sound healing, and I'm very interested in this because there's so much to unpack here. What was it that you were told during your near-death experience about sound healing? But I'm also curious about sound healing itself, and I know that there are different frequencies, and I know it's a whole topic in itself, but I'd love for you to share first what you heard and sort of downloaded about that, and then what you know now about what sound healing is, how it works, what it all means.
Sure, those are great questions. So what was I told? I was told that I would become a channel for pure tones, and that I would become uh, that I would do work with sound, the bowls, but mainly just being a pure for like they talked about the Hawthorns and the Syrians, coming through me, and that sound and frequency is the basis of the nature of reality. Everything is based on frequency, sound, and vibration. And that they lined up with geometries, and that the sound combined with geometries can create healing, divine healing within the body. So that was what they told me, and that is what Deb told me, 10 years down the road. So let's get into your question about sound and sound healing. So let's start with the word universe. The word universe means one song, right? One song. The word person is Greek for through sound, personas. So you are literally created through sound. You are personas. Now, the Native Americans, particularly of the Hopi and the Anasazi, tell stories that the Native American elders would sing to crops and produce kernels of corn the size of most men's thumbs. Now, James Redfield talks about this in the Celestine Prophecy, where if you sing to your plants, they will grow. So if you look at all the masters' names, Sai Baba, Buddha, Yogananda, Mir Baba, and Jesus' name was Yeshua, they all have the ah sound. Well, there's a gentleman, oh man, I want to say 1917, 19, somewhere on there, Hans Jen, who did cymatics. And cymatics is basically showing that everything in nature, when you run a sound file through it, makes a very specific geometric pattern. So like the butterflies have a geometric pattern, dogs have a geometric pattern, leaves have a geometric pattern. And when you run, like when he was doing filings, like metal filings and sand over metal and running sound through it, they'd make these complex geometric patterns. Now there's a gentleman by the name of John Stuart Reed who's taken cymatics and made it three-dimensional. His work is really brilliant. And then of course, Matsura, Emoto Matsura, Messages from the Water, took cymatics and took pictures of it and showed it that these, like when you think I hate you, I'm going to destroy you, the geometric pattern of water collapses and it breaks down when you think I love you, I love you, I love you, you are so wonderful, and makes this brilliant, intact geometric pattern. So it not only shows that everything is based on frequency, sound, and geometry, but our thoughts, our feelings influence things at a cellular level, you know? So back to sound. So this is really interesting. Everything is based on hertz and frequency. So this is why sound is so important to you and I and the planet. There's a guy by the name of Dan Carlson. He's out of Wisconsin. He's a farmer and he became interested in sound for healing because his wife had cancer. And they found that with Rife technology is basically just utilizing frequencies. Like a tumor is a dense energy. So modern medical doctors now, what they do is that they break up gallstones and kidney stones with sound waves, right? So he found that certain frequencies and certain hertz were able to break up the tumor in his wife's body. Now, Greg Braden does this on video. He's got a video, an ultrasound video of Qigong healers using sound and vocal toning to dissolve a golf ball sized tumor in 3 minutes. I mean, it's a live video. It's just amazing. So this is where it gets exciting with sound and sound. So Dan Carlson became fascinated with frequencies and sound. And he started playing around with the sounds and things like that. He found that when he ran a 4 to 5,000 hertz frequency through the fields, it generated a 400% greater yield in the crops. I mean, talk about a real solution to world hunger. Not a 30, 40% greater yield, but a 400% greater yield when he ran that 4 to 5,000 hertz frequency through the fields. And it was for everything, tomatoes, corn, it didn't matter what it was, it did it time and time again. So then he became fascinated with nature. This is why this is just amazing. He found that when birds sing in the morning, they are singing between 4,000 and 5,000 hertz. Birds are literally singing life into the planet every single morning. They're getting things to grow and to awaken. When crickets chirp at night, they chirp at 2,000 cycles per second. They're literally closing everything down. The other Hopi legend is it says that grandmother Spider Woman sung the web of existence into life. I mean, motherese, I mean, regardless of what language you have, whether country you're from, motherese at high pitch, you feel that? Is spoken to every baby, and it is how babies acquire language. So I mean, there's so many fascinating things about sound and frequency. I mean, the Aboriginals in Australia, if you go on a walkabout with the Aboriginals and you break a bone, they put you on a tree, they put you up against a tree, and they all get in a circle around you, and they go into the drones of the didgeridoo, and within 24 hours you're walking again, because the sound is creating healing in the body. This is a thing, New York Times, about showing how blood cells can be corrected using sound and frequency. And of course, Edgar Cayce, the famous psychic, said that sound would be the healing modality of the future. And I think that we're on that cutting edge of, because in the vocal toning that I do, because what I do is I literally become a crystal bowl. I channel the pure tones that come through me, and it doesn't matter if I've had 5 people in the audience or over 500 people in the audience. That sound will go to each individual person's greatest point of pain and break it up, because that sound has its own awareness, its own consciousness, and it dissolves pain. And we have people that just kind of go out after hearing the pure tones, because it's such a pure or higher vibration. But yeah, sound and frequency is definitely very, very powerful, and it's healing people all over the planet. It's awakening people. You ever hear, like, I remember when I was in Ireland, in Dublin, back in 2005, and there was a soprano, an alto soprano, out in the streets, singing, and it was probably one of the most angelic things I've ever heard in my voice. I mean, ever heard. And we forget about how powerful the human voice is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, music alone, it's
so
like, who doesn't like music unless you have some neurodivergent sound sensitivity or something? I mean, most of us, there's something that happens through music that feels so spiritual. I was a music booker for many years, so music's a whole, music's a huge part of my life. And I always think how can people create? I just said it yesterday, listening to somebody create music. And I said out loud in my car, people are amazing that we
yeah, yeah.
can create these sounds and these melodies and these just these tones. And not all music is some is more moving than others, but it does feel so spiritual. And yeah, tell me what you were going to
I was
say.
just gonna say I got sidetracked because I tend to ramble a lot.
Oh, you're doing great.
So so back to the Yogananda, Buddha, Krishna. So with JayJen's work, they found that when you do the ah sound, you make the ah sound. When you run through an oscillator, it makes the Sir Yantra, which is the 27 interlaced triangles, which is the Hindu symbol of God. And it does it well if I look at an angle like this, or maybe, it makes it, and it makes it each and every time when you do the ah sound. Ah, it makes that Sir Yantra. So the ah sound is the sound of creation itself. And, excuse my French, but when most people have an orgasm, it's that's, your person, you are created, through sound. So everything is based in sound and vibration and energy. And the ah sound is probably the most powerful sound that we have out there.
Yeah, and what about the ohm sound? I was just hearing that the reason we do it, well, I don't know if it's the reason we do it, but when we say ohm, it's the way it vibrates through our whole body that can sort of balance our energy. You can tell me what you think about what you know about
Yeah,
that.
so contrasting the ah sound, the ah is the sound of creation, where the om is the void. So you put the sound of creation into the void where it can uh to manifest.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, I also had another question about, oh, yes. So when you were a kid, you were very sensitive. You already had this awareness of E.T.s, spirit, and a real strong connection. My theory is that a lot of people who have had near-death experiences, I would say at least half, um, had near-death experiences, but already were very intuitive. So my theory is that they were sort of meant to have that near-death experience to show them more, because for whatever reason, you were born not entirely forgetting who you really are. Like, the
Right,
veil
right.
is still thin for you, and I think a lot of people, we come here, we forget. And some people come into this world s
Wide awake
wide
from day
awake,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it almost feels like there's some reason. Do you feel like there was a reason why you had, I mean, obviously, you had free will and you consumed things that would shut your organs down, but from a spiritual standpoint, was there a reason that you had that near-death experience? Was it sort of like a, "Hey, we've been trying to tell you and you understand, but because you're being shut down, sorry, we're going to, no, don't stop, don't give up, don't shut down. Here's more information because you are meant to do this work, and that's why we've given you this." Was there a reason, I guess, do you think, from the spiritual standpoint?
Yeah, I think what you just said is plausible. However, is my understanding that the original soul and the one that came in and took over, it was part of an agreement, part of a contract. And and I get to ask this all the time, but it's Psalm 139:16 says that every day was ordained in your book, every moment was laid out in your book before a single one had passed. And I really believe that we plan our lives out. We agree to our parents, we agree to our circumstances, we agree to our living situations, um, and we agree to everything. And because people always say, well, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is there so much evil in the world? And it's because you wanted someone to forgive.
Mhm.
You wanted someone to forgive you, and you wanted to experience forgiveness and love, and your soul said, this time I'm going to demonstrate the power of love. This time I'm going to show love. And I mean, that's kind of the core of Christianity, the crucifixion, that it was that Jesus loved so much that he was willing to do that. Um, and I go into a whole metaphysical term of explanation of that. And I do believe that he went on to live, that he had children with Mary, which is talked about in the Da Vinci Code that came from the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail. But there's a lady out of Rwanda in the Congo who Immaculée uh, Abezigal. I'm probably not saying her name right. I know her name, first name is Immaculée. 1994, Rwanda, the Congo, and they came in. They killed her family. They killed the whole town, whole village. They did awful things to everyone there. And she survived with 700 people because they hid in in someone's bathroom for 91 days. And when the civil unrest came undone and they kind of brought things back to stability, they gave Immaculée the opportunity to do harm to the main perpetrator, the leader of uh, uh, the army, or the militants who did the atrocities in Rwanda. And she found a way to have full forgiveness, compassion, and love. And you hear this story. I mean, she was on Oprah. She's been in countless TV shows about this. It is deeply powerful. It's deeply moving. And you go, that's it.
Mhm.
She got it. That is what you are supposed to do. And trust me, it's easier said than done. But if you want an example of the of demonstrating what the power of love can do, it, no matter what happens to someone, she nailed it. She nailed it on the head, and she got it. But I mean, of course, we forget all of this. We forget, and we go back and forth. And you know, I say this somewhat jokingly because we all pray for a soulmate or a twin flame. And I agree with Abraham Hicks. Uh, pray for the person that enables you to feel the best about you.
Mhm. I love that so
Yeah.
much. I remember reading, you've mentioned a few things. I remember in college, I don't know why, I was at a party and I don't remember being spiritual, so I'm not sure why someone said this to me, but they said, you need to read the Celestine Prophecy. I think you would really love it. And I read it and I was in Paris at the time studying abroad, and I just remember thinking, "This is the hokiest crap I've ever read in my life." It's so corny. It's like this nerdy Mr. Van Driesen from Beavis and Butthead who's, like, fantasizing that he's Indiana Jones, but now, in fact, you just reminded me, now I wanna read it again because now I get it. Yes, it's cheesy, but it's also he was using the story to not just sort of write down, "This is how things work." It was, like, turned into a story for entertainment value, but I'm very interested, in a lot of that, which I'm now sort of understanding about connections not being accidental, synchronicities. I just remember vaguely, I mean, this was like 30 years ago, but I'm like, I remember something about the plants and seeing the auras around things and knowing that if you sit next to someone and have a conversation, your your paths were meant to cross. There's some message in there to be learned. Um, I would just love to know more. I've another question after this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on just any kind of thoughts you have about the truths or things that resonate for you in that book.
Yeah, I really believe that there are no accidents or no coincidences, and that your life is kind of set into motion before we incarnate here, and we tend to incarnate with about 20 or 30 people that we call a soul family. Often they could be your aunts or uncles or your cousins, or there's people that you meet. And also we do we can have parallel lives, meaning that your oversoul can incarnate into 3 or 4 individuals at the same time.
Yep.
I've been told many times in my dreams that Sammy Hagar, the famous rocker, former lead singer of Van Halen, is one of my parallel lives now. He does not know this. I've
Right.
never met
You're
Sammy.
not gonna
I've
call him and be
never
like,
met
"We're the same
Sammy.
person."
Yeah,
Yeah.
the only thing I know is that it's my understanding that Sammy does believe in E.T.s and things like that. I think that's what the song "Love Comes Walking In" is about. But yeah, there's no knowledge of that. But so the Native Americans teach that your life is the way that it is because it can't be any other way. So yeah, I mean, you meet who you're supposed to meet when you're supposed to meet them, and like sometimes you just look at someone and you immediately know them.
Yep.
There's a familiarity about them. It's because you've had other incarnations with them, or you've had past lives with them.
Yep. I was just
Absolutely.
having this conversation with my best friend today who about she's like, "You have to watch this, Twin Flames thing on Netflix," and she said, "I want" and she's not spiritual really, but she's open-minded because of what I do, so she was saying, "I really wanna hear your thoughts." And I because she's kind of like, "I don't know what I think about this stuff," and that's what I had said is that my belief and understanding, I'll know when I get to the other side for sure, but is that soulmates don't have to be someone that you're hooking up with romantically. Soulmates are everyone that's close to you or even people you encounter that are meant to be there for a life lesson, for, whether it's your husband, your sister, your brother, your mother, your dog, whatever it is that, Laura Lynn Jackson, the medium, said that life is a play, and then when it's all over, we all meet up backstage and sort of debrief and hug each other and say, "That was okay. We did our job. Good job. High five. We kind of accomplished what we were meant to." So I definitely believe in not the romantic version of soulmates, but that I said to her, the people that taught me the most, my ex-husband, who I know I have many, many regrets about that, but I know that we were meant to have that experience. I was very young, and then the person who was my most toxic relationship, I'm like, without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, I think we were here to mess each other up and then go our separate ways, and I'm like, he was my biggest teacher. So, I think soulmates don't have to be like, "Oh, he's my soulmate." I mean, I think you have many. Do you? Kind of what do you think?
Yeah, as far as twin flame goes, you probably only have one twin flame, and I'm with mine at Lori right now, but I think we have many. We could have several soulmates.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
yeah, yeah.
And, okay, so now I wanna talk about something else. I just finished watching the Netflix series Encounters, which I highly recommend because, well, first of all, these shows are getting better and better in terms of their quality. It's cinematic, the editing, the cinematography, the lighting. So it really tells a story in a very compelling way so that it looks like it's on film, but it's a documentary about, E.T.s, UFOs, and that sort of thing. And I'm really excited to see it being treated less sensationally, that it's let's and I'll just say that the final sort of scene of this whole documentary had me weeping as they're talking about E.T.s and how they're here to help us. And I'll stop babbling about it because I know it's not about me, but I want to hear your whole. This is why I'm asking you. They had showed that when there's been the threat of a nuclear plant
Yeah,
exploding,
they've
dead.
flown over they've flown over silos,
Yes,
shut them off. Yeah,
silos, and they showed it, which I just kept going. I was crying, seeing that as at Fukushima,
right.
um, after the tsunami, and there was the nuclear plant was in danger of sort of, I don't know if detonating is the word, but and they just show all of a sudden these beautiful UFOs, but they're crafts, these light crafts forming different patterns in the sky. And people's theory is that they're trying to help us come back into balance and making sure that does not happen because that could destroy the earth. And they're like, we can't destroy this planet. We want to help you. So I'd love to hear just what you know. And also, I'd love to know more about what you experienced as a child in terms of your contact with interdimensional beings.
A lot. So,
Yeah,
um, wow. So, let's deal with the nuclear stuff because the
that was
world seems to
fascinating.
be the world seems to be on edge, and it's my understanding that there are certain ETs out there that they want us to press buttons and go, you know, we don't have anything to do with humans, and but there are a lot more ETs out there that are doing everything to prevent us from pushing buttons. And this group, the Syrians, Illyrians, Lemurians, the Octurians, they're all wanting us to evolve, to go into this higher dimensional consciousness. And it's the Zeta Reticuli, the grays that Hollywood has a fascination with, the small gray to large eyes. They they really would rather that we just go kaboom, but they seem to be they seem to be losing the battle right now. Thank God. And so yeah, there is divine interference. They've been monitoring us for many years, and I wholeheartedly believe that there are several of them involved in the Galactic Federation that we call the Galactic Federation, or some people will say Ashtar Command, um, that are monitoring everything. And they have the technology to shut off silos, to just turn everything off and say no, you're because the Earth. If you ever listen to like Billy Carson stuff, and his information is really good. He's on Gaia.
Hmm.
He and other people, John Volo talked about this, Barbara Marciniak, who wrote Bringers of the Dawn, one of the best channel books by the Palladians out there, even though a lot of stuff they said didn't come out. Um, the planet's been destroyed before. I mean, they found pieces of molten glass in the middle of the desert. The only thing that could explain that is like a high temperature, like a nuclear bomb going off, causing sand, to form to make glass. And there's just, like doorways and in pyramids and temples that are partly melted. And again, there's no other explanation for it unless it was a very high detonation, high explosion. Um, so I believe that is true, that there are aliens observing everything, and they are doing whatever they can to make sure that we don't go kaboom again, right? So that's good. So aliens and ETs in my own life. I want to say the last time I saw a UFO was in Sedona, Arizona. It was probably 2016 as I was getting ready to leave from Sedona to go back to Charleston. They were the
Mm.
cigar orange shapes, and you could see the beings inside them. And they're orange. They're the ones that are very common in the Southwest, particularly over Mexico.
And then this show also, or no, it was Unsolved Mysteries, which this season is all about sort of supernatural and also beautifully shot. And they were talking about the Navajo Nation area. as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's very, so Mexico's, Arizona, New Mexico, it's very common to see these orange crafts. And that's like their active Merkaba, and they're breathing that
Hmm.
into the field. So as for my, so that was the last, but I've also had encounters like with beings in my dreams, other states. As far as a child, I would say that the encounters with the E.T.s were the grays, the Zeta Reticuli, and it was very intrusive. It was very unpleasant. Um, they put implants in me, and they say that Barbara Marcinek and others talk about this, that they can observe an individual who they think is a threat to break the fear, the matrix, the control frequency on the planet, and they'll put implants in them to hold them back from growing. And so those those encounters, my mom says to this day that she remembers as a child that I would like wake up in the night just screaming in sheer terror. And I
I did
think that's
too when I was little.
so that might be they were doing. And again, like this is important for people to understand is like, well, so let's say that Shannon, you and I agreed to like a study that we were going to do an overnight study at a university to see if we were quote abducted or not. And we both have this abduction experience. Wake up next morning, they say nothing happened. You were both here the entire time. What do you mean you're abducted? Most alien abductions occur on interdimensional realities.
I was going to
They,
ask you
they
that it's
yes, so
they're taking our astral bodies, not our physical bodies.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so since then I've had, and then there were encounters with beings. I particularly remember these beings that were like turtles. They were like tortoise-like, and they had so much love, and they would just hold you and have compassion for you. There were also loving experiences, but specifically in my childhood, from like 4 to 7, 8, 9, they were intrusive. But since then I've had the implants removed.
That's what I was going to ask you. If they put in these implants, how come it doesn't work? Do you know what I mean? Like, how come they don't succeed? And who removes them, or do you not know?
I don't know if I can answer the best healer that I've found at removing implants. His name is Ken Page, and I think he's out of Austin. He's in Texas, Austin, Texas, and he developed what's called multi-dimensional cellular healing. And I just cannot recommend his work enough, because not only like implants from aliens, but let's say that you had a lifetime. I know you want to talk about past life regression too. We'll get to that next.
Yeah.
So let's say that you had a lifetime that you had shackles, or that you were placed in the blinks, what are they called, the bricks,
Hmm.
the blocks, the stockades, the blocks. And so you have that imprint, the energetic imprint is there. Boy, when he said that I still had shackles on from a lifetime, when he pulled those off, my legs shut up. Woo! Straight up in the air. It was really intense. And when he pulled out the implants here and the one here, it was remarkable. His name is Ken Page, and he does multi-dimensional cellular healing. That's pretty profound. I just I I just don't know if he's still doing it, because I'm 54, and it was 20, 30 years ago when I worked with him. He's got to be in the 70s now.
Okay, good. But that's great
Yeah,
to
yeah.
know, so people can look
All
him
right.
up. So please,
So,
yes, let's talk about the past life regression, because my friend and I were also talking about this.
all
This
right.
and can
So,
I ask, and I want to ask you something. I want to hear what you have to say, and I also want to, we'll ask you the question after. You go ahead.
so I've been doing past life regressions since 1991. I was probably the youngest person to train with Dick Sutphin, although Sunny Dawn Johnson, who wrote Invoking the Archangels, who have known for many, many years, he says that she was younger. She and I both trained with Dick Sutphin when we were like 18 or like 19, 20 years old. So I learned past life regression from him, and this is why, because people say, well, it really doesn't matter. Well, that could be true, but I have found in doing them for 30 years that a lot of our unconscious energetic patterns, what we are putting out to the universe, is from unresolved traumas from past lives. And I'll just give you a couple examples of that that what I think people can relate to. Let's say that you're a female woman and you're trying to have a child, and no matter what you do, you can't conceive a child. You've tried everything. What if you find out in a past life that you were uh, like in the mid 1800s, were very poor, you didn't have money, and you had no other options but to put a child that you just had on the doorsteps of a church because you were not able to take care of the child. So in this lifetime, you have an unconscious fear that if I have a child, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to have to give it up. So that your body does whatever it can to shut it down from having a child again because it's so afraid of that experience. Because that energetic pattern, energy doesn't die, it only transforms. So we tend to carry these things with us. The other example would be like, let's say someone that has eating disorders. No matter what they eat, they're never satisfied, they're never full. So what if you had 2 or 3 lifetimes in a row where you were dead by the time you were
Yeah.
20 years old and you were always starving to
Yeah.
death? So unconsciously, subconsciously, you think that you're here to starve. And so you just keep eating because you haven't resolved that unconscious trauma. And or it doesn't even have to be, past lifetimes. It could be this lifetimes if you get people that do into mediumship, and I've done mediumship before. You know, I had a guy I went on before Dolores Cannon at the Wake Up Now conference. I think it was 2011 or 20, must have been 2011 because she died shortly after that. A major influence in this industry. And this guy comes up to me and he says, Mark, this stuff is crap. It's nonsense. I don't believe it. I don't even know why am I here, Mark?
Yeah, I was going to ask, why was he there?
Why are we here? But I want to talk to you, Mark. I'm like, I got you. All right, all right. So I said, there's this older man standing behind you. I'm going to guess he's your dad. And but he's very specific. He's holding a wooden airplane. And he's pointing to this wooden airplane and he's pointing to you. And this guy, Shannon, just drops to his knees and wails like a 4-year-old
Oh,
girl. I mean, just tears are like squirting out of his eyes. So he finally gathers himself. He said, when I was 7 years old, I built a wooden airplane for my dad, but I sat it on a chair. I went to the kitchen to get something to eat. When I came back, I forgot that I put it on the chair. I sat on the wooden airplane and I broke it. I
hmm.
was never able to give that chair to my dad. His dad came through to let him know that he
He
got.
got it.
Wow.
I
I
know. I'm
cannot
gonna.
make that up.
Nope. I know. I'm a
No.
medium too, and there are things where I'm like, my friend's an atheist, or at least I don't want to put. That's kind of what he's said. Is he's very, very skeptical. So the other day he's like, "All right, show me, show me." Like I'm open, and I said, "All right, as long as you don't judge me, because I don't know if I can do it for you, but we'll see." He's one of my best friends, and I was like, "Your mom, okay, let's get your mom," because I know, obviously. And I was like, "Did you guys go to the circus together?" And he's like, "No." Why am I seeing clowns? Well, my mom liked clowns. Okay. And he goes, she had framed pictures of clowns all over the house. I'm like, Kyle, how would I know that? Like, I don't know that. You don't talk, and then by the end of it, he calls his sister and he's like, she just said this and this and this. His sister goes, yeah, I know what that means. I know what that means. And I was like, look, it was still tough. It was like pulling teeth, but I got some stuff that no one would know. And the beauty in that is not because I'm so great, because I'm not perfect. It's really about the joy in, I've been wanting to give him that because he's in so much pain over the loss of his mom. And he's always like, he doesn't think there's anything after. And I'm like, I need him to know that his mother is still here to help him heal. And the time was then. And again, he's still like, well, you could be tapping into another multiverse. Or I said, isn't that cool though? Because that shows that this isn't all there is. I said, yeah, I'm open to that idea. I said,
Right.
the only reason I know your mom's here is I feel her energy. But yes, could I be reading your mind? Could I be tapping into another dimension? But doesn't that say something about the nature of reality anyway, which is pretty inspiring?
Yeah, you just said something that's really important, is that when you cross over, uh, that the thing that they want, and I don't really do a lot of mediumship anymore. I do intuitive counseling. Um, they want closure. They want that, they want to feel forgiven. They want to express forgiveness. And I said for years in my talks, when I talk about this near experience, it's like, if you knew that you only had 3 days to live, who would you call, what would you say, and what would you do?
Ah, that's great.
It's like, well, if you already know, what are you waiting for? You know, and, and it's like,
Amen to that.
it's like, if you already know, what are you waiting for? Because we like to think I'll be here tomorrow, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of do because I've already crossed over once, but the reality is, you don't, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's so important to have those, because that's, you when you're lying on your deathbed, it's more about not the things that you did, it's the things that you didn't do. And I say this to people all the time. It's like we keep saying, well, what do I tell me what I need to do? Just show me what I need to do. And maybe the real question is, maybe you need to ask, what do you need to stop doing?
Wow. Yeah. And I could talk to you for like 20 hours, but I do have one more question that
Sure.
is I'm going to preface with a little story. But it's, as my friend and I today were talking about past life regression. She said, I don't buy it because why all past life regressionists, like you were this famous person, you were this king, this queen. And I said, I know. That's kind of troublesome for me too, that it's like, why was I Joan of Arc? Why couldn't I have just, maybe I was just Joan Smith from Iowa who lived on a farm. Well, and I said, I actually had a past life. Well, I didn't do a regression, but she was telling me like your Akashic records. And she's like, you were Francis d'Assisi, the patron saint of animals. I'm like, I could see that because I'm the one who goes and picks up rats off the side of the road when they're hurting. And but I was like, but why, why that? And she said, that's what makes me dubious. And I said, however, and I said, I think that there are plenty of legitimate, like you, past life regressionists. And I'm not saying she wasn't. She's legitimate, but I just question how do we know? There's no validation for me. So um my question is, so I decided to do a past life regression for myself, which I've tried before and it didn't work. And I recently did this where I'm like, let's just see what happens. So I have this person in my life who's a friend, but we have this otherworldly connection. We've had out of body experiences. We communicate telepathically. And we're not in a romantic situation, but I'm like, what is this? Like, what are you trying to show me? So I just said, all right, I want you to show me who we were to each other in another life. And I went into this meditation and immediately I'm like, I heard Jacques. I heard Battalion 52. I heard, and then I suddenly was like in this person's body where I was crying and I'm like, I'm a Swedish woman. I know I'm Swedish. So I do some Googling afterwards, and I find out that George Jacques was the commander of the 52nd Battalion, and that it wasn't his wife. I thought I was his wife, but it turns out I reached out to her cousin and her niece, who told me she didn't even die until I was already born. And she said, but I found out that he had this sort of nanny that raised him, and she was from Sweden. And I started to put these pieces together. There were a few other things I don't remember, but I was like, I think that I have the suspicion that he was like my baby, kind of. He was like my son in a sense,
Right.
because I felt he went to war. That was the other thing, is I saw she was crying because he went off on a ship. Well, I know that George was from here, but he went to Germany. And I was like, there's this sense of loss. And she was too young to be his lover. So I don't think that's the thing. But so that was a long way to get to I guess that question of, as a past life regressionist, I know that you just lead people. You don't tell people you were this person, or they kind of lead themselves through it. But any kind of thoughts about that? Why so many people kind of go, "Oh, I was like Plato," or and any kind of thoughts you have in general about that topic is fine. There's no specific question as much as I want you to talk about it.
Yeah, because it's not too exciting if you found out that you were Farmer Joe in a
Yeah.
village,
Like, why wasn't I a cashier at a gas station or
or
something?
and so a couple of things about that. So let's say that you had Napoleon, right? Napoleon Bonaparte. And let's say that you had, I don't know, 50, 70 people that all said they did a past life regression, and it wasn't someone telling them, but they got in their past life regression that they were Napoleon Bonaparte. Would they all be right? Would they all be wrong?
Right.
So my theory is that they would probably all be right, because the soul is energy. Soul always expands and divides, expands, divides, expands, divides. So if that soul that was Napoleon Bonaparte had an oversoul and it kept dividing and expanded, you could have several people who have fragmented from that one soul who would still have a energetic lineage to that lifetime, and they would all be valid and correct. Now, I just think it's what Hollywood or what people fantasize, or they expect it to be that way. But you might find out that you worked in a brothel in Charleston, South Carolina, in the late 1700s as the colony was developing. And it's not, or you might find out that you're a farmer, but it's not always that you're, the Queen of England,
Right.
or someone famous. And sometimes people get disappointed. I tell them that it's like you might, or the worst thing, my God, is like, and this has happened to me before, and I had to pull someone out of hypnosis really fast. They found out that they were a Nazi, and they
I
were
knew you were going
killing,
to say that. Yeah. Wow.
and they were killing people, and it's like, because it was such a shock to who they were, what they stood for. It's like, we've done all things. We have gone back and forth, the good guy, the bad guy. We played all roles. We've done all things, and the ultimate goal. The only word in the English language that has love in it is evolve. You're here to evolve.
Yeah.
So
That's so interesting. Yeah. I definitely, the Swedish woman, there's a record of her, but she was just like a servant that lived with them. And I've looked her up and I can't find anything about her. I can find George, his wife, plenty of information on them, but she was just sort of like lived with them and helped raise the kids. And that's all I know. So,
mm,
it is so interesting. I thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your insights. There's so much more to know, but I want to, uh, can you just share? I'll put it below as well, but I'd like you to share where people can reach you for spiritual counseling or sound healing or any services that you offer.
yeah, so feel free to reach out to me. I'm pretty good about answering and responding to emails. It's Mark MRK dash Patterson PATTERSON.com. That's Mark MRK dash Patterson PATTERSON.com. If you don't include the dash, you're going to get a famous jeweler in New York City. So got to include that hyphen. And
Thank you.
I love to help people out. It's so exciting. Lately, I've just had so many people on breakthroughs with Zoom getting answers to the solutions they've just never had their entire life, and all of a sudden it clicks in and they get it. So it's really exciting. I'm working on these power cards, universal power cards, inspirational messages. Those should be out next couple of weeks with like a reflection guidebook as a digital download, and those are available to pre-order on my website as well.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Mark. I
You're
really
welcome. My
appreciate your
pleasure.
time and energy, and I know that my audience does too.
All right. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Namaste. Blessings. Thank you.